Quindi darei la parola a Darren, che è qui da qualche giorno e quindi ho già avuto modo di chiacchierare con lui e di conoscerlo, e penso che quello che vi racconterà sarà molto interessante, e quindi lascio la parola a lui, così lo conosco.
Ciao a tutti, mi chiamo Darren Quek, sono il leader della Forest School Singapore, una delle prime comunità cefano Forest School nata a Singapore nel 2016. Il significato di Forest School può essere facilmente su Google o ChatGPT online. Ma per me, Darren, e per molti dei nostri compagni della Forest School Singapore, accompagnatori, genitori e bambini, è diventato più di quello che Google può spiegare. Forest School è diventato il nostro modo di apprezzare e vivere in questo universo. La scuola del bosco si adatta alla comunità in cui esiste una comunità che ha un'organizzazione più formale. Presentare una scuola del bosco che ha un'organizzazione più formale con focus sulle attività, una comunità relazionale. Presentare una scuola del bosco intuitiva con focus sulle relazioni. Anche se apparentemente divisi, sono tutte scuole del bosco proprio come la natura. Il nostro obiettivo principale è aiutare a portare le persone in uno spazio tra la terra e le stelle. Forest School Singapore rappresenta uno spazio di libertà, natura, selvaggia, connessione e impegno. Presentiamo attenzione ai segni della natura e dell'universo. Al centro della nostra esistenza è la casa che siamo tutti tutt'uno con la natura. Siamo una comunità in evoluzione delle stagioni che sono proprie dell'arcipelago malisi. Siamo coraggiosi, intrepidi e creativi di fronte alle avversità. Siamo uno spazio in cui il tempo e la luce possono esistere in modo significativo. Forest School Singapore e natura. Nel contesto attuale delle pratiche a Singapore esistono molte varianti della pedagogia della natura del bosco. Abbiamo iniziato con uno del 2016. Del 2023 ci sono attualmente più di 70 comunità di Forest School. I diversi approcci creano un ecosistema più ampio che sarà in grado di soddisfare i diversi modelli di apprendimento e di esperienza dei bambini creati dalla natura, e nella non standardizzazione dell'essenza dello stare fuori e dell'apprendimento ci sviluppiamo una comprensione con la natura e noi stessi. Thank you, Sasha. So I would like to share now in English because this is a script, so I'm not going to follow the script. I'm going to speak from my heart. I hope and Salima will translate as this. Okay? So before I start, I would like to recognize the indigenous people of Singapore as well as in the world. I think it's important because they are the pioneers of Earth, right? They are the first to practice ways and lives and learning in relation to nature. So in Singapore, right, we are very close with our indigenous people in terms of learning. So they guide us, they advise us, and they provide us with wisdom, right, for us to learn, for us to do our forest school on the land. And I think that's important. So I'd like to share with you all a story. Okay, so the story is this: in Singapore, we are basically summer throughout the whole year, tropical country, right? So it's hot whole year. So for us to do forest school or be outdoor in the afternoon, it's very, very tiring. The kids, the children, Mambini, the children will actually get frustrated easily. They have their temper comes up easily. Even the teachers have that problem also. So curious, I went to ask our indigenous elders, when do you all go outdoors thousands of years ago? Like, you also live in tropics. So the elders shared with me that they only go outdoors when sunrise to about 10 a.m. and from 4 p.m. to sunset. So the middle of the day, they stay in the shade. They are under the trees in the forest. They are not out under the sun. So after following the elders, the indigenous elders, we started to do our forest school in that timing, and it worked magically. We started to understand why the morning, why the afternoon. Morning and afternoon have very different energy, and that energy also defines how our children, how we behave in the session. So we also learned that in the morning, there's a lot of exploration, there's a lot of creativity, but in the afternoon, it's more consolidating, it's more coming together, reflecting. So the energy is different. So when the kids comes, it's also different. So we learned this from the elders as well. Now I'll share a little bit about my own journey as a forest school practitioner. I've been an educator for 15 years, and I was actually teaching as a sports PE teacher, physical education teacher in preschool, so early years. And while teaching the kids in the preschool, I noticed some of my kids who are special needs, so autistic, ADHD and all that. Sometimes they can't fit with even a outdoor sports exercise program, they can't fit. And I was concerned, but I wanted to find out, are there any education, any form of learning out there that can include my children who don't fit with the system? At that time, I met my forest school sensei, so she's a Japanese. Her name was Atsuko Yamamoto. I met her because I was teaching her daughter in the preschool, and she was a parent. And so she shared with me about this concept called forest kindergarten, and it was in Japan, right? And I went with her, I followed her around in Singapore, we went to walk in the forest with other kids, and I started to see how it works. After I experienced with her, I decided to bring some of my special needs children into the forest. And the experience was amazing because the kids can be themselves. I can be myself. I don't need to coddle them, try to make them be what the society expects them to be. They can be themselves in the forest. I can be myself. The whole experience was not just good for the children, it was good for myself. Which I think from that point on, it was clear to me that I wanted to know more and explore more about forest school and the way that it's done, the practice and all. I began my journey, of course, with my sensei Atsuko in Japan, but I also went to UK, right? I went to Sheffield to do forest school practitioner level 3 training. I think Mike will know. Yes. Yeah, so I went there for training and learned many of the structural aspects. So I saw the difference in the way that the learning happened. So the UK version was very much more structural, right, technical in the aspect. But the Japanese version was very mystical. Because I'll give you an example. My training involved, I go out when I was in Japan, when I went to Japan with my sensei, I live with them. And in the morning, when sunrise, she asked me to go out to the mountains, walk by myself, and then come back when sunset. And then when I come back, then I have to give her my reflection and talk and share. So it was that form of learning, was like an apprenticeship than a course. So it was different in the methods and ways. There's culture involved, there's context involved, there's the land, there's the people, the history. All this comes together and influences the practice. So our practice, in Italy you have your practice, in Singapore we have our practice, in Japan they have their practice. It looks different because of these elements, but at the core of it, the nature is still there, which I think really completes the holistic experience. So I would suggest, if anybody can, to come to Singapore or Japan or to go other countries, to experience it differently and come back. You'll see the whole picture really differently. That was the beginning of the journey. So I've been doing forest school for the past 7 years, right? I think, and there's a whole journey of not just the practice, growing, supporting. There's also the business. We have to make money, right? We have to survive, right? So in Singapore, our forest school Singapore is a business, is for profit, right? But because we wanted to raise the value of our practice, we asked the question, why are we doing something good and we have to give it for free? We have to do it at lower price. Why is it not that these things are valued, whereas, as Mauro shared, the things of exploitation are higher value than us? So we have that question, so we push for business. So it's not easy. There's the business, there's the politics. So we have to deal with our politicians. We sometimes have to deal with the police. Because, as some of you will know, if you do forest school, in some places, some people may not agree with the way the kids interact with the land, right? So there is that element as well, and we put ourselves out there to challenge this system. But I think the most important part of that journey is actually a personal thing. So people may think you do forest, you are Tarzan, right? But the truth is, I'm actually a control freak, right? I like to control. And I have my fear. I'm scared of uncertainty. And so all these things turn up when I'm doing forest school. It is when you are doing a practice, when the kids climb up a tree, you scared, right? When they start taking up a stone, they throw in some direction, you scared they hit somebody's head. So there's a lot of that fear, and a lot of the work is internal. It's very personal, internal work. And there are days where compound this with business, with politics, with managing and supporting people, community, it becomes very, very overwhelming. So for me, after being overwhelmed, right, one thing I did, so I'll be honest here with everyone, I got drunk quite a bit in the past 7 years when I'm doing forest school, because when it gets overwhelming, I have my regulation way and I drink, or maybe I smoke. And these are my methods. Yeah, I'm not encouraging anybody to do it, okay? I'm not encouraging anybody to do it. I'm just saying it's me. Because there's pain, and we all know we pick up whatever, alcohol, cigarette, all this, because there's pain. And I recognize my pain. Because of the work I do in forest school, we have to recognize our own pain, where we are painful, where we are suffering. But the magical thing is, this pain is also nature. because this pain is the underlying foundation that builds us as well. So that was really a season for me to learn about accepting myself, even though I don't look very good, or that I have that pain or that image that is not good. But so I want to share is, but I would never substitute this experience for anything else, even though there's pain, because the pain, the joy, or the experience of practicing forest school for the past 7 years, it completes the cycle for me. It completes my seasons and my rhythm for myself. And I think that's very important, because when doing the forest school, I start to realize even in the trees, in nature, like what we see, these beautiful things, underneath it, all the soil, all the organism, or even like the fossil fuels and all that, is built through death, destruction. There is a cycle of life that allows the ground to have the soil, therefore have the greens. That whole process is a cycle. And I start to see my pain as part of that cycle as well, and start to accept myself even better. So from there, it became my understanding of what we have discussed, the season. We all have a season. I realized all of us here who practice forest school or nature pedagogy is gonna at some point practice it different from another person. Eleanor's gonna practice different from me, Mike is gonna practice different from Sarah, everybody's gonna practice differently from each other. But the reason why we practice different is each of us have our own personality. And our personality will become the practice, will become the way we do forest school. There is a general route guide of how we do it, yes, outdoor, nature, there's a few skills, yes. But at the deeper end, the practice comes from us. We must remember we are also nature. So when we do the forest school in this fashion, we are doing what nature would have been doing. But before that is to understand first, who are we? When you are authentic, the forest school experience will be authentic for the children, for the community. Sometimes you quarrel, sometimes you fight, but it's authentic, and that is what keeps people together and connects each other. Is it the same for everyone? But in Singapore and in many countries I go, the practitioners all share about the spiritual aspect of forest school practice, right? The magical aspect even. And I asked this question to, if you know this book called The Last Child in the Woods by Richard Luff. Yes. So I managed to meet him online and ask him this question. Why are most practitioners not talking about the spiritual part of forest school work? And he said this time, which I agree with him, he said, because the spiritual part of forest school work can only be understood by experience. No words can describe the experience. And he gave the example. He said, if you ever step outside there and you see a wild animal, right? And the wild animal look at you, you look at the wild animal, when your eyes get in contact, that moment of connection, that moment of experience, he described it as that is that moment where the magic happens. But not often and we can't put a description how it like. Your experience and my experience is different in that, but there is the connection. Because, and for me, I had it once in Singapore when I saw the civet cat. So we have a civet cat, and the civet cat was on the tree. It was looking at me. I was looking at him. I was scared because I was afraid he's going to jump. But that fear plus that moment you're not moving, there's this conflict, there's this complexity of relationship there that drew me to stay there. And I didn't know. In the end, I stood there looking 2 hours. I stood there looking for 2 hours. I do not know why. But that moment to me was what I felt was what Richard shared about that connection and magic moment. I'll end off by sharing this line that Atsuko Yamamoto, my sensei, shared with me. We do forest school because we want to help bring people to a space between the earth and the stars. Thank you.